Number 1, during which interval was the average rate of change the greatest? So we need to find the change in y over change in x for each of these options. So what we'll do is we'll start with from 0 to 3. So from 0 to 3, we would subtract the y values. So 489 minus 325 over 3 minus 0. So we can put that into Desmos to simplify. 489 minus 325 is 164 over 3. So 164 divided by 3 is 54.67. So we'll make a note of that for A, the rate of change is 54.67. Now for B, 3 to 5. So from 3 to 5, we want to find the rate of change. So we're looking at 530 minus 489 over 5 minus 3. Okay, so 530 minus 489 is 41 divided by 2. So 41 divided by 2 is 20.5. So we'll make a note of that. So far, it can't be B because A is already greater. For C, from 5 to 6, so the y values in 6 and 5, that's 550 minus 530 over 6 minus 5. So 550 minus 530 is 20 over 1, which is just 20. So from 5 to 6, the rate of change is 20, which again, that is not the greatest so far, so we can mark that one out. And finally, from 6 to 7. So that would be 600 minus 550 over 7 minus 1. 7 minus 6. So 600 minus 550 is 50 over 7 minus 6 is 1, so that rate of change is 50. And again, that is not the greatest. So the greatest is A. From 0 to 3 had the greatest rate of change. Number 2, find the rate of change. Explain what the rate of change means for the situation. The table shows the cost of a ski rental package for a given number of people. So find the rate of change. Well, how much is the cost increasing per person? So our change in Y over change in X. Okay, well, the change in Y, we want to see if it's constant. If not, we might have to find the average rate of change. So 200 to 240 is going up by 40, 240 to 280, 280 to 320. So that is a constant rate of change of $40. And let's look at how the number of people changes. 5 to 6 is plus 1, 6 to 7, and 7 to 8 is all plus 1. So 40 over 1, and remember that means 40 blank per blank. Remember, it's always Y per X. So cost in dollars per person. So that would be $40 per person. What is the rate of change between x equals 1 and x equals 4? So from this graph, what we can do is find the 2 points that it's asking us to find. So between x equals 1, so remember this is our x-axis, so this is x equals 1, and at x equals 1 we have this point on the graph. So this is the point 1, 1. When x equals 4, the point on the graph is 4, 2. So we want to find the rate of change between these two x values. So we have the point 1, 1 and 4, 2, and we want to find the change in y over change in x. So the change in y, we would do 2 minus 1, and change in x, 4 minus 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1, 4 minus 1 is 3, so that's a change of 1/3. All right, the table below shows the distance a car traveled. What is the meaning of the rate of change? So we need to find the change in y over the change in x. So remember, when a table is laid out horizontally, x is on top and y is on the bottom. So our change in y is actually the bottom part of the table that we're going to be looking at to find that. So from the change in y, we have from 20 to 40, which is going up by 20. 40 to 60 is going up by 20. 60 to 80 and 80 to 100 are all going up by 20. So our change in y is 20. Then the change in x, 25 to 50 is plus 25. 50 to 75 plus 25. And all of the rest of those are plus 25 each time. So the change in y is 20, the change in x is 25. Notice that our options here don't have 20 and 25. That's because this can be simplified. Both of these can be divided by 5. That's the biggest number that they can both be divided by, so we can simplify that. That would be 4 over 5. Well, remember, we want to know the meaning of the rate of change. So what did y represent? 4 what? Miles. And 5 what? 5 minutes. So this reads 4 miles per 5 minutes. So the car travels 4 miles every 5 minutes. The table below shows the average weight of a type of plankton after several weeks. What is the average rate of change in the weight of plankton from week 8 to week 12? So we're only looking between week 8 and week 12. Those are our 2 points that we're going to use to find the change in y over change in x. So we're going to subtract 0.49 minus 0.04. And then 12 minus 8. All right, in Desmos, 0.49 minus 0.04. All right, that gives us 0.45. And 12 minus 8 is 4, so we need 0.45 divided by 4, which is 0.1125 ounces per week. Jesse is filling a pool with water The table below shows the amount of water in the pool after different amounts of time. Assuming Jesse filled the pool at a constant rate, how much water was initially in the pool? So what it's asking us to find is that initial value, or the y-intercept. Now we find the y-intercept when x is 0. You could also think about the amount of water in the pool before he started adding water to it. So that would be the amount of water in the pool when the time was 0. So if the time is 0, we can find the amount of water that was in the pool by using the rate of change, since this is a constant rate of change. So the rate of change from 16 to 24, that is plus 8. 24 to 32 is plus 8. So what number would we have to do? What number would we have to add 8 to in order to get 16? Right? 8 plus 8 is 16. Then we can go backwards on the x values. So from 1 to 2, that's going up by 1. 2 to 3 is going up by 1. So what number would we have to add 1 to in order to get 1? That would be 0. So when there is no time that has passed, or the initial amount of water is 8 cubic inches. A basketball clinic charges $200 per player for a group of 25 players. When a group brings 35 players, the rate is reduced to $150 per player. What is the decrease in the cost per player, or the rate of change? Let's set up a table to organize this information. So we have the number of players, and we have the cost, because the cost depends on the number of players. So that is dependent, and x is independent. So when there are 25 players, the cost is $200 per player. And when there are 35 players, the cost is $150 per player. So we want to find what's the rate of change that the cost goes down as more players are in the group. So from $200 to $150, that's going down by $50, and the number of players went up by 10 people. So our change in y, or the change in cost, and the change in x, or the change in people. So our cost went down by $50 when the number of players went up by 10. Well, negative 50 over 10 we can simplify. Both of these are divisible by 10. So if we simplify that, that would give us negative 5 over 1. So negative 5 what? Remember, y was the cost, so it went down $5 per person. So the decrease in the cost was $5 per person. Kathy is renting a car from Company A. Company A charges $80 to join plus $15 per day. How much will Kathy pay for the rental after 3 weeks? There's a couple of things we need to realize here. We have a flat rate, which would be the initial value of $80. Then we have a rate of change. the rate of change in her overall cost is $15 per day. So how would this translate into some sort of equation or something that we can use to find how much the cost would be after 3 weeks? Well, it's important to know the rate of change was 15, but that was $15 per day. And we want to know what is the cost of her total after 3 weeks. Well, days and weeks are not the same because $15 per day means that we would have to find out how many days are in 3 weeks. So how many days are in 3 weeks? 21. So we're really trying to find the total after 21 days. So her total cost, we'll call that Y, is equal to $15 per day X plus the initial $80. But we want to know what is the total cost after 21 days. So we're going to plug in 21 for X. So she pays $15 times 21 days plus the $80 that she had to pay up front. So she has to pay $395 after 3 weeks. Sarah is renting a car that has a fee of $90. She is charged $19.99 for each day T. If the car rental is represented by a linear model and the y-intercept is decreased by $7 because she has a coupon, what is the value of the new y-intercept? So we need to realize what we're looking for. What is the value of the new y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is always the flat fee. So what was the flat fee to begin with? Well, the original flat fee was $90. But notice that it also says she has a coupon and it's decreased by $7. So we would take that original fee and subtract $7, bringing her total for the flat fee down to $83. Drew bought a new video game. The table below shows his score after playing the game different numbers of times. What is the average rate of change for Drew's score between Game 3 and Game 5? So between Game 3 and Game 5, those are the 2 points that we're looking at. To find the average rate of change, or the change in y over change in x, we would subtract the y values, so 11,821 minus 11,343 over 5 minus 3. We can simplify that. 11,821 minus 11,343 is 478. So his score increased by 478 over 2 games. but we want to know how much did his score increase on average for each game. So 478 divided by 2 is 239. So that will be 239 points per game. What are the slope and y-intercept of the graph? From this equation, we have y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So our slope is 1.7 and the y-intercept is 3.8. So the slope m is 1.7 and the y-intercept b is 3.8. Debbie bought a car for $33,500. Every year the car loses value by $1,000. She wants to draw a graph that shows how much the car is worth. What is the equation of the line? So to have an equation of a line in slope-intercept form, we need to know two things. We need to know the slope or the rate of change, and we need to know the y-intercept or the initial value. So the total cost of this car, y, is equal to the rate of change. So how is the value of this car changing? It's going down or losing value by $1,000. So each year it's going down $1,000. So the total value is negative 1,000 per year x plus the original value of the car, which was $33,500. Write the equation of the line graphed below. So first, if we're going to write the equation, we need the slope m and the y-intercept b. First, let's find the slope. By picking two perfect points, we can count using rise over run to find the slope. It appears that this is a perfect point, and this is the point 2, 1. And I see a perfect point here, and that's the point 1, 3. The only reason I'm labeling these is because we could make a table to find the rate of change, or we can just count up and over, but if we count up and over, I want to make sure that they are two perfect points. So these two perfect points are labeled as whole numbers, so I can use them. Now to find the rise over the run, I will have to start from one point and then count up or down to get to the next one. So if I start at this point, I'm going to have to go up 2 and left 1. Since I went up, that's a positive 2. Since I went left, that's a negative 1. So 2 over negative 1 equals negative 2. So y equals negative 2x. Now I need to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is up here at positive 5. So the equation is y equals negative 2x plus 5. The graph below shows the total amount of meals that can be packed each hour at a shelter to be distributed. Which is the best explanation of the slope of the graph? So remember that slope just means the change in y over change in x. So the change in y would be the change in the number of meals packed. The change in x would be the time in hours. So regardless of what the numbers are for the rate of change, or the slope, the interpretation is going to be meals per hour. What is the x-intercept of the line represented by this equation? Remember to find the x-intercept. That happens when y is 0. So in this equation, we will substitute 0 in for y. Five times 0 is 0, so that is eliminated. And we are left with negative 3x equals 15. Divide by negative 3 on each side, and we get x equals negative 5. Now we just have to be sure that we write this as a point, x comma y. Well, we found that x was negative 5, and that happened when y was 0. What is the y-intercept of the line given by this equation? So we have 3x minus y equals 6, and we want to know the y-intercept. That happens when x equals 0. So we'll substitute 0 for x. Three times 0 is 0, so that's eliminated, and we have negative y equals 6. Finally, we have to divide by negative 1 on both sides. So we get y equals negative 6. As a point, xy, when x was 0, y was negative 6. Shell's cell phone plan gives her unlimited minutes for a base price of $23.50. She is charged 10 cents per text message T. Which equation models the total monthly cost C for the cell phone? So her base price would be her flat rate, which is the y-intercept. So if we're looking for an equation in y equals mx plus b form, we already know that b should be $23.50. And then she's charged 10 cents for each text message T. So 10 cents per text message would be the rate of change. So the equation should read y equals 0.10x plus $23.50. Since we have c and t, we would replace y and x with c and t. For working 5 hours, Devin earns $60. For working 7 hours, he earns $84. What is the slope of this line? Interpret the slope of the line. So to find the slope, we could set up a table to find the rate of change. So for 5 hours, remember that cost, or the amount of money, or his earnings, is dependent on how many hours he works. So for 5 hours, he earns $60. For 7 hours, he earns $84. So what is the slope From 60 to 84, that's a change of $24. From 5 to 7, that's a change of 2 hours. To simplify this, the change in y over change in x is 24 over 2, which can be simplified to 12, or 12 over 1. Interpret the slope of the line. Well, that goes back to our x and y values. 12 what per what? Well, it would be 12 y per x, or dollars per hour. Which of the following is the correct graph of the linear function y equals negative 4x minus 4? First, we can see that the y-intercept should be negative 4. So we can go to each graph and see where the y-intercept is. This one appears to be at negative 3, so it's not this graph. B appears to have a y-intercept at negative 4. C has a y-intercept at negative 2, so it's not C. D has a y-intercept at negative 3, so it's not D. Our option has to be B, but let's check on the slope just to be sure. So from this point, I can go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and left 1. So up 4, left 1 does give me a slope of negative 4. So our answer is indeed B. The graph below represents the amount Sheila pays for her cell phone service, a monthly fee plus a charge for each minute she uses her phone. Which of the following represents cost per minute? Well, we have a graph here, and we have some x and y values, but notice that the question is just asking us what represents cost per minute. Well, blank per blank, this tells you that this is a rate of change. So which one of these options tells us a rate of change? The x or y-intercept, the range, or the slope? Rate of change is the slope. And that's all we had to do for this one. 21. What is the equation of the graphed line? What is the y-intercept and what is the slope? First, we want to find the equation. What kind of line is this? It's going from left to right, so that's a horizontal line. So when we think horizontal, we can think HOY, H-O-Y. H tells us that it's horizontal. 0 tells us the slope is 0. Y tells us that the line is going to be y equals some number that it crosses over at the y-axis. So let's find the equation of this line. Well, it crosses the y-axis at the value of 4. So y equals 4 is the equation of the line. The y-intercept is how we found the equation of the line. The y-intercept is 4, or the b value is 4. The slope of this line is 0 because there is no change in y. So the slope m equals 0. To lease a car, you must pay a flat rate of $1,000 plus $200 per month. Write a linear equation to describe the total cost, y, of leasing the car for x months. What is the cost of leasing the car for 3 years? Well, the flat rate is going to be our y-intercept or our b value. $200 per month tells us the slope. So we could write an equation in slope-intercept form using the y-intercept and the rate of change. So y equals $200 per month plus a flat rate of $1,000. If x represents months, then we need to know how many months are in 3 years. Well, each year has 12 months, so 12 times 3 is 36. So there are 36 months in 3 years, which means 36 is our x value. So remember, the total is y, and the number of months is x. That's why we had to change from years to months. So the total cost y is 200 times 36 plus $1,000. We can type this in Desmos. 200 times 36 is 7,200 plus 1,000, which brings the total to $8,200. What is the equation of the graphed line? What is the y-intercept and what is the slope? Well, this line is vertical. So when we have a vertical line, we want to think VUX. V stands for vertical, U stands for an undefined slope, and X stands for an x-intercept, or x equals some number for the equation of the line. So let's start with finding the equation of this line. The equation is going to be x equals whatever the x value is that this line passes through. So the equation is x equals 3. The y-intercept, well, our y-axis is here. So this line is never going to touch the y-axis, so there is no y-intercept. Now the slope is undefined. If you have a hard time remembering Hooy-Vux, you could always use the change in y over change in x to find the slope of any line. When you do that, you just need to remember some mathematical rules. Well, if we were to pick 2 points, the first point we have is 3, 0. The second point we have is 3, 2. Those were just 2 perfect points that I chose so that I could find the rate of change. If we make a table with these, we have the point 3, 0 and 3, 2. So if we subtract, the change in y would be 2 minus 0. The change in x would be 3 minus 3. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 3 is 0. Well, anytime there is a 0 in the denominator, we can't divide by 0. So the slope here is undefined because we end up getting 0 in the denominator. Find the x and y-intercept of the line given by this equation. Remember that the x-intercept happens when y is 0. So we have this equation. We're going to plug in 0 for y. Two times 0 is 0, so that eliminates, and we have negative 5x equals 20. Divide by negative 5 on both sides, and we get x equals negative 4. So the x-intercept is -4, and the y-intercept is going to have to be 10 because we don't have any other options with an x-intercept of -4. But let's work it out just to be sure. The y-intercept happens when x is 0. So if we have this equation, we're going to plug in 0 for x and solve. -5 times 0 cancels. We have 2y equals 20. Divide by 2, and we get y equals 10. Target sells notebooks for $5.50 each and markers for $2.75 each. Write an equation in standard form for the number of notebooks N and markers M that a customer bought for $22. So we have $5.50 per marker, $5.50 per notebook N plus $2.75 per marker is a total of $22. What are the x and y intercepts of the graph defined by this equation? Well, the y-intercept we can see is 25. As a point, that is the point 0, 25. So automatically, it has to be A or B. To find the x-intercept, we plug in 0 for y. So we have y equals -5x plus 25. Plug in 0 for y and solve. So we would move the 25 first. So -25 equals -5x. And then divide by -5. So we'd get +5 equals x. Or that's the point when x was 5, y was 0. So that gives us option A.